In the spring of 1944, the Pacific War had entered a dangerous and decisive phase. Japanese submarines were no longer hunting merchant ships alone. They were being positioned along key sea lanes to intercept American carrier groups, disrupt amphibious operations, and strike at the logistical arteries that kept the U.S. Navy moving westward. For American planners preparing for the next major offensives, enemy submarines represented a silent, unpredictable threat capable of inflicting outsized damage. What no one expected was that this threat would be nearly erased in a matter of days by a single, relatively obscure ship. USS England DE-635. USS England was not a battleship or a fleet destroyer. It was a destroyer escort, built for one primary purpose: hunting submarines. Smaller, slower, and lightly armed compared to frontline warships, destroyer escorts rarely earned headlines. Yet England was uniquely prepared for the role it would soon play. Its crew was highly trained in anti-submarine warfare, its command disciplined and methodical, and its equipment represented the cutting edge of naval combat. At the heart of this advantage was a new weapon that fundamentally changed how submarines could be hunted and killed. Unlike traditional depth charges, which exploded at preset depths and relied on guesswork, England was equipped with the Hedgehog anti-submarine mortar. Hedgehog launched a pattern of contact-fused projectiles ahead of the ship, detonating only if they struck a submarine's hull. This meant no explosion unless there was a hit, no loss of sonar contact during an attack run, and immediate confirmation of success. It turned submarine hunting from an art into a science. Combined with skilled sonar operators and disciplined fire control, Hedgehog allowed England to attack with precision that enemy submarines were not prepared to counter. England's moment came as part of a broader intelligence operation. American codebreakers had achieved significant success in reading Japanese naval communications, allowing U.S. forces to track submarine movements with increasing accuracy. In May 1944, intercepted messages revealed that a line of Japanese submarines had been deployed in the Pacific to ambush American forces. These boats were ordered to hold fixed positions, waiting silently for targets. What Japanese commanders did not realize was that their transmissions had already sealed their fate. USS England was dispatched to hunt them down, armed not just with weapons, but with knowledge. The first engagement came swiftly. Guided by intelligence and sonar contact, England closed in on its target and executed a textbook Hedgehog attack. When the underwater detonations confirmed a kill, the crew understood they had proven the system worked under combat conditions. But no one yet imagined what would follow. Over the next 12 days, England would repeat this process again and again, each time refining its tactics, each time striking faster and more confidently. Submarine after submarine vanished beneath the waves, often without ever knowing it was being hunted. This sudden string of successes was not coincidence. It was the result of preparation meeting opportunity. England's crew trusted their equipment. Their commander trusted their training. And the Japanese submarines, constrained by rigid orders and unaware that their communications were compromised, had little room to maneuver. One by one, the hunters became the hunted. By the time the pattern became clear, it was already too late. The story of USS England begins not with a single dramatic battle, but with a quiet realization spreading through the Pacific Fleet. Something unprecedented was happening. A modest destroyer escort was dismantling an entire enemy submarine line almost single-handedly. And in doing so, it was about to set a combat record that has never been matched in naval warfare. The first confirmed sinking was only the beginning. As USS England moved through the patrol area, American intelligence continued to provide increasingly precise information about Japanese submarine positions. Codebreakers had identified not just the presence of enemy boats, but their intended patrol lines and orders to remain stationary. This created a deadly imbalance. Submarines are designed to hunt while remaining hidden, but they become vulnerable when forced to wait in predictable locations. England's crew understood this and exploited it with ruthless efficiency. Each contact was approached methodically, sonar operators maintaining continuous tracking while the ship maneuvered into attack position without alerting the target. Lieutenant Commander Walton B. Pendleton, England's commanding officer, enforced strict discipline during every engagement. Attacks were never rushed. Sonar data was cross-checked. Firing solutions were calculated carefully. Hedgehog salvos were launched only when contact was firm and the ship's position optimal. This patience paid off. When England attacked the Japanese submarine Wani-16, the result was devastating. A clean sonar trace, followed by the unmistakable explosions of contact hits, confirmed another kill. Wreckage and oil soon surfaced, leaving no doubt about the outcome. What made England's success extraordinary was not just the technology, but the consistency. Hedgehog attacks demanded precision. A single miscalculation could result in a miss and allow the submarine to escape. England's crew maintained near-perfect coordination, attack after attack. Sonar teams detected subtle changes in underwater acoustics. Weapons crews adjusted firing patterns based on previous engagements. Each sinking sharpened their effectiveness. This was not luck. It was a rapidly evolving mastery of anti-submarine warfare under combat conditions. The Japanese submarines, meanwhile, were operating under outdated assumptions. Their commanders believed they were invisible. They trusted depth, silence, and the ocean itself for protection. What they did not know was that they were being hunted by a ship that could maintain sonar contact during an attack and confirm kills immediately. Traditional depth charge attacks often allowed submarines to slip away unnoticed. Hedgehog removed that uncertainty. Once England made contact, escape became unlikely. By the time the second submarine was destroyed, a grim pattern had begun to emerge. As reports reached U.S. Navy headquarters, disbelief gave way to attention. A single destroyer escort was achieving results that usually required entire hunter-killer groups. England's patrol area began to resemble a trap rather than a search zone. Japanese submarine traffic slowed, signals grew more cautious, but the orders remained unchanged. The submarine line was to hold position and wait. This rigidity, combined with compromised communications, left the Japanese boats fatally exposed. Within days, USS England had sunk multiple submarines without sustaining damage or even serious counterattack. Each success reinforced the crew's confidence and refined their tactics further. The ship became a moving laboratory of anti-submarine warfare, proving that intelligence, training, and technology could neutralize one of the most feared weapons of the Pacific War. What began as a patrol was rapidly turning into a systematic dismantling of an entire enemy force, and England was only halfway through what would become one of the most remarkable two-week periods in naval history. By the middle of May 1944, what USS England was accomplishing could no longer be dismissed as a string of fortunate encounters. The pattern was undeniable. Japanese submarines were being found, fixed, and destroyed with an efficiency that shocked even seasoned anti-submarine commanders. Each sinking reinforced a dangerous truth for Japan. Their submarine doctrine was failing, and they did not yet understand why. England, meanwhile, was refining its methods with every engagement, turning repetition into dominance. One of the most decisive factors was how seamlessly England integrated intelligence into real-time combat. Intercepted Japanese communications provided approximate patrol areas, but it was England's sonar team that transformed this information into lethal precision. Once contact was made, the submarine's fate was often sealed within minutes. During the engagement with RO-106, England demonstrated how completely the balance had shifted. The submarine attempted evasive maneuvers, changing depth and course, but Hedgehog attacks kept coming. Unlike depth charges, there was no blinding explosion to mask the submarine's movements. Sonar contact was never lost. When the final salvo struck, the confirmation was immediate. Another submarine disappeared without ever launching an attack. This level of control was unprecedented. Submarine warfare had long favored the defender. A submerged boat could wait silently, strike unexpectedly, and vanish into the depths. England reversed that dynamic. The destroyer escort dictated the engagement from start to finish. Japanese submarines became reactive rather than predatory, forced to evade instead of attack. Many were destroyed without ever knowing they had been detected. For crews trained to believe in stealth above all else, this was catastrophic. As the days passed, the psychological impact began to compound. Submarines further along the patrol line received fewer updates. Some signals stopped entirely. Yet the overall Japanese command picture remained dangerously incomplete. Communications were fragmented, and the assumption persisted that losses were isolated incidents rather than the collapse of an entire submarine line. This delay proved fatal. USS England continued its hunt, locating and destroying RO-104 and RO-116 in rapid succession. Each kill followed the same disciplined pattern: detect, track, attack, confirm. On board England, exhaustion set in, but morale soared. The crew understood they were witnessing something extraordinary. There was no celebration, no pause for reflection. Each engagement demanded full concentration. Hedgehog attacks required perfect timing and coordination. A mistake could still be fatal. Yet under pressure, England's crew performed with relentless consistency. The ship's bridge, sonar room, and weapons teams functioned as a single unit, bound by trust and repetition. By now, the broader consequences were becoming clear. Japanese submarines were being removed from the operational picture at a critical moment in the war. With the Battle of the Philippine Sea approaching, American carrier groups depended on secure sea lanes. Submarines that might have harassed or ambushed them were simply gone. England's actions were not just tactical victories. They were shaping the operational environment of the entire Pacific campaign. What made this period so remarkable was how quietly it unfolded. There were no dramatic surface battles, no flaming wrecks visible to cameras. Submarines vanished beneath the ocean, one after another, leaving only oil slicks and debris as evidence. Yet within less than 2 weeks, USS England had effectively destroyed an entire segment of Japan's submarine force. The scale of the achievement was only beginning to be understood. And still, the hunt was not over. As USS England pressed on, the scale of what was happening began to crystallize. This was no longer a localized success or a temporary disruption. It was the systematic destruction of a coordinated Japanese submarine operation. One by one, the remaining boats on the patrol line were being eliminated with the same cold precision. The engagement with RO-108 followed the now familiar pattern. Sonar contact was established quickly. The submarine attempted to evade by changing depth and course, but the ocean offered no sanctuary. Hedgehog salvos were launched with exacting accuracy. Moments later, underwater detonations confirmed another kill. Oil and debris rose to the surface, marking the end of yet another submarine that had never fired a single torpedo. What made these final engagements especially striking was how little resistance Japan could offer. There were no countermeasures capable of breaking England's sonar lock. No air cover arrived. No coordinated response materialized. The submarines had been deployed under the assumption that stealth alone would protect them. Instead, that stealth had been neutralized by technology and training they did not fully understand. The ocean, once their greatest ally, had become a trap. The final submarine, RO-105, was destroyed after a determined but futile attempt to escape. England maintained contact for hours, patiently adjusting course and speed, waiting for the moment when the firing solution was perfect. When the Hedgehog pattern struck, it ended the 2-week campaign as decisively as it had begun. 6 submarines, 12 days, 1 ship, no damage to USS England, no losses among her crew. It was a record without precedent in naval warfare. Only afterward did the full significance become clear. Japan's NA submarine line had been completely wiped out. A coordinated effort intended to threaten American operations had been erased before it could have any effect. For the U.S. Navy, this was a validation of everything it had been working toward: integrated intelligence, specialized ships, disciplined crews, and new weapons designed specifically for undersea warfare. For Japan, it was a devastating lesson in how quickly the balance of power had shifted. Yet USS England's achievement remained largely invisible to the public. There were no dramatic photographs, no captured enemy ships, no single climactic battle to summarize what had happened. The victories occurred beneath the surface, confirmed only by sonar returns and oil slicks. But within naval circles, the impact was profound. England had proven that submarines could be hunted and destroyed systematically, not just deterred or driven away. As the Pacific War moved toward its final massive confrontations, the sea lanes were safer because of what had happened in those 12 days. Carrier task forces sailed with fewer unseen threats beneath them. Amphibious operations proceeded without the constant fear of ambush. The work of USS England did not end the war, but it removed a critical danger at exactly the right moment. And in doing so, it secured a place in history as the American destroyer escort that achieved what no other warship ever has: the complete destruction of 6 enemy submarines in less than 2 weeks. The achievement of USS England did not go unnoticed within the U.S. Navy, but it was understood in a very specific way. This was not viewed as a lucky anomaly or the result of extraordinary circumstances alone. Naval analysts immediately began studying England's patrol in detail, breaking down every engagement minute by minute. What they saw confirmed something many had hoped but few had proven so clearly. Anti-submarine warfare had entered a new phase. The combination of signals intelligence, continuous sonar contact, and forward-thrown weapons like Hedgehog had fundamentally shifted the balance beneath the sea. Submarines were no longer untouchable predators. They could be hunted deliberately and destroyed with precision. For the crews of other destroyer escorts, England became a benchmark. Training manuals were updated. Tactical doctrine was refined. Sonar discipline, attack patience, and confirmation procedures were emphasized across the fleet. England's methodical approach showed that restraint mattered as much as aggression. Attacks were launched only when conditions were ideal, not rushed for the sake of speed. This lesson spread quickly through the Pacific Fleet and beyond. By late 1944, hunter-killer groups were applying these principles on a wider scale, further shrinking the operational space available to enemy submarines. The psychological impact on Japanese naval planning was just as significant. Although Japan did not immediately grasp the full scope of what had happened, the sudden loss of multiple submarines in a confined time frame forced a reevaluation of undersea strategy. Submarine patrol lines became less rigid. Commanders were given more freedom to maneuver, but by then the advantage had already shifted. American detection and attack capabilities continued to improve, while Japan's ability to replace lost submarines and trained crews steadily declined. What England had demonstrated in 12 days became the norm over the following months. There was also a symbolic dimension to England's success. Destroyer escorts had been conceived as utilitarian ships, designed to protect convoys rather than dominate battles. England shattered that perception. It showed that even modest warships, when used correctly, could have strategic impact far beyond their size or firepower. This mattered deeply in a war defined by industrial capacity and specialization. Victory did not always come from the largest ships or the most dramatic battles. Sometimes it came from quiet efficiency, repetition, and mastery of a specific mission. Yet for all its importance, the story remained largely confined to professional naval circles. There were no victory parades for destroyer escorts. No headlines announced the disappearance of submarines that never returned. England's crew returned to routine operations, their record intact, but their fame limited. The war moved on to larger events, larger fleets, and larger headlines. But beneath the surface, the impact of what England had done continued to shape the Pacific War in ways that would only become fully clear in hindsight. In the final assessment, the story of USS England stands apart not because it was dramatic, but because it was definitive. Naval warfare is often remembered through massive fleet engagements and iconic ships, yet England's legacy was forged in silence beneath the waves. 6 submarines vanished one after another without warning or spectacle. No distress signals were sent. No counterattack succeeded. The ocean simply closed over them. In less than 2 weeks, a single destroyer escort achieved what entire task forces often struggled to accomplish over months. That record has never been matched. What makes this achievement even more remarkable is how narrow the margin for error was. Anti-submarine warfare demands patience, discipline, and precision. A single mistake in sonar interpretation, timing, or positioning could have allowed a submarine to escape or counterattack. England's crew made no such mistakes. They operated as a perfectly integrated system where intelligence, technology, and human judgment reinforced one another. Each successful engagement increased confidence, but never complacency. The crew understood that the ocean punished arrogance instantly. Their consistency under pressure was as important as their weapons. The broader war soon overshadowed their accomplishment. The Battle of the Philippine Sea, the advance toward the Marianas, and the final drive toward Japan dominated attention. Yet those operations unfolded in a maritime environment made safer by what USS England had already done. The absence of those 6 submarines mattered. It meant fewer ambushes, fewer losses, and greater freedom of movement for American forces at a critical stage of the war. England's impact was indirect, but it was real and measurable. Today, USS England remains a quiet benchmark in naval history. Its record endures not as a legend inflated by myth, but as a documented fact rooted in logs, sonar reports, and confirmed sinkings. It represents a moment when preparation, intelligence, and innovation aligned perfectly. In a war defined by scale, England proved that precision could be just as decisive. 1 ship, 1 crew, 12 days, and an entire enemy submarine line erased. That is why USS England's achievement still stands alone, and why its story deserves to be remembered as one of the most extraordinary naval feats of World War II.